You don't quit because you're weak. You quit because you don't even see the wall. That's the truth no one wants to hear. 80% of people never make it past the first level of commitment, not because they're lazy, not because they don't care, but because they crash headfirst into a wall they were never told existed. An invisible wall. Silent. Hidden. Deadly. You've hit it too. You just called it something else. Maybe you said, it wasn't the right time. Or, something else came up. Or, I need to get more clarity before going all in. But those weren't the reasons. They were symptoms. The real cause? You didn't realize you were entering a mental kill zone. Because the moment you begin to shift your life, truly shift, it doesn't feel like excitement. It feels like confusion. Fatigue. Doubt. Resistance from your own nervous system. And here's the trick, your brain interprets that resistance as a signal to stop. But that resistance is the wall. And it's supposed to be there. What most people don't know about day 3. The wall doesn't show up on day 1. Day 1 is exciting. Motivating. You made a plan. You felt unstoppable. Day 2 still has some energy. The vision's alive. You're proud you stuck with it. Then comes day 3. Or day 4. Or the first time you're tired, sore, behind, embarrassed, or not seeing results. And something in you pulls back. Not all the way. Just a little. That's the wall. Not a physical one. Not even an emotional one. It's a neurological shift, your mind recognizing you're threatening your old identity and reacting to pull you back into the known, into safety, into sameness. Most people turn around here. Not because they've made a rational choice to quit, but because they never trained for the wall. So they shrink. Just enough to lose momentum. They still post once a week. Still journal here and there. Still tell themselves, I'm still doing it, just at my own pace. That's not action. That's survival. That's 80%. Napoleon Hill warned you, but you didn't hear it. Hill said, persistence is to the character of man as carbon is to steel. But what did he mean by that? He didn't mean willpower. He didn't mean grinding it out until you collapse. He meant something far more potent, something so few actually build. A systematic approach to hitting the wall and punching through it every single time. That's what makes you unstoppable. You don't quit because it's hard. You quit because no one showed you how to handle hard. So let's fix that today. This wall has 3 layers and you're likely stuck in one. Every invisible quit wall has 3 stages. The fog, you lose clarity. The original reason you started begins to fade. You forget why it mattered so much. The friction, everything feels harder. Energy drops. Your mood shifts. You hesitate more than you act. The fake justification, you start creating logical excuses. Smart ones. Things like I should pause and reevaluate or I think I need to rest. Each layer feels reasonable. But each is a trap. The wall doesn't say, quit. It whispers, wait a while. And you're not ready. And be smarter about this. But what it really means is, stay in the 80%. You've been here before, you just didn't call it a wall. Think back. That fitness challenge you started. That business idea you never launched. That online course you got halfway through. That writing project still collecting dust. Every single time, you hit the same wall. It just wore a different mask. Sometimes it showed up as self-doubt. Sometimes it looked like something more important came up. Sometimes it looked like burnout. But the pattern was always the same. Start strong. Hit friction. Slow down. Rationalize the slowdown. Fade out. It wasn't your fault. But it's now your responsibility. Because now you see it. The 80% aren't lazy, they're untrained. Let's kill the lie once and for all. People who quit early aren't failures. They're not weak. They're not lazy. They're untrained in the one skill that matters more than all others: how to act when you don't feel like acting. Discipline isn't about force. It's about conditioning. It's about recognizing the internal warning signs as part of the process, not a reason to stop. If you feel unmotivated, that doesn't mean you're off track. It means you're at the edge of transformation. If you feel confused, that doesn't mean the goal was wrong. It means you're stretching into a new identity. If you feel like stopping, that's when you go. Not later. Now. Micro-shift formula: beat the wall before it builds. Here's your first tool. Call it the micro-shift formula. Use it anytime you hit resistance. Name the wall, don't let it hide. Say out loud what's blocking you: I'm hesitating because I'm afraid this won't work. Cut the timeline: instead of "I'll do this project today," say "I'll work on it for 6 minutes. Shrink it. Move before you think, set a timer. Start without planning. Let motion override hesitation. The goal isn't to crush the wall with brute strength. The goal is to slip through a crack before the wall becomes real. You're not trying to win the whole battle today. You're training yourself to never stop cold. This is why the 20% look like superhumans. The 20%, the ones who finish books, build companies, lose the weight, become disciplined, they're not built different. They just understood something sooner. Consistency is not about feeling ready. It's about moving when you aren't. They expected the wall. They trained for the wall. They built systems that made the wall irrelevant. That's what you're building now. This script, this formula, this day, is your turning point. No more accidental quitting. No more slow fade. No more "I'll try again next time." This is your line in the sand. Write this on a card and tape it to your wall. Here's your first code from Napoleon Hill's core. I do not wait for the mood. I create the motion that builds the mood. Tape it where you work. Say it when you hesitate. Burn it into your identity. Because you've seen the wall. And now, you will never be fooled by it again. Most people stop when the feeling ends. You train until the feeling doesn't matter. That's the separation line. The 80% wait for the spark to come back. They think, if I could just get that motivation again. But motivation doesn't come back. It's not lost. It's used up. It served its purpose to get you started. Now comes the part that builds who you are. The 80% mindset: fuel-driven, fragile, and emotional. You've been trained by culture to chase motivation. Scroll enough reels. Listen to enough highlight speeches. Watch enough success edits, and you start believing that greatness feels good all the time. But that's not how it works. The 80% build habits like they're building a playlist. Each action needs a vibe. A mood. A push. No vibe, no action. And they wonder why they keep stopping. But real transformation begins at the exact point the feeling drops. Why? Because every feeling drops. The excitement of starting fades. The novelty disappears. The feedback slows down. The result still feels far away. And now you're left alone. With nothing but your decision. That's where the 20% train. That's where you begin. The 20% routine: boredom-proof, identity-locked, and motion-led. The 20% don't feel inspired every morning. They don't wake up smiling into sunrise. They don't feel like it all the time. They just don't need to. They built a system where the action happens regardless. How? Because they learned something you're now learning. Discipline is not a personality trait. It's a practice, repeated until automatic. And most people never repeat long enough to get there. They stop at the exact moment it's starting to work. The drop-off point, where you must go one step further. You've seen it in yourself before. You build a streak: 3 days, 6 days, maybe even 10. Then something interrupts. A rough morning. A trip. A curveball. And instead of rebuilding immediately, you hesitate. You say, "I'll reset Monday. I need to replan. I should figure out a better schedule." But no. What you need is one step. One tiny step. Immediately. Today. You don't need to restore the whole system. You just need to make sure you don't stay still. Because every hour you stay still, the wall rebuilds. Your nervous system doesn't care about success, it wants safety. Here's the hard truth. Your brain isn't designed to make you great. It's designed to make you comfortable. It will use every tool in its arsenal, emotions, thoughts, memories, fatigue, to pull you back into familiar territory. So the moment something feels off, your mind says, "Let's pause. Let's rest. Let's think." But this is where most people get played. They confuse comfort with clarity. And so they stop, not because they made a conscious decision, but because they trusted a chemical reaction over a committed identity. Napoleon Hill's unseen lesson: train for the dip. Napoleon Hill didn't just preach ambition. He studied stick-through. He wrote about it over and over in different words. Victory is always possible for the person who refuses to stop fighting. Refuses. Not feels like continuing. Not has a perfect schedule. Refuses. This is where your real training begins. Not when it's fun. Not when you're hyped. But when the feelings fade and you stay anyway. Train like a machine, then build the soul back in. Most people try to get inspired before they act. You flip it. You act to trigger inspiration. And in doing so, you train your nervous system into a new pattern. Action first. Emotion second. Identity follows. It feels robotic at first. That's okay. Because it's not your permanent state. It's your transition. Think of it like training wheels on a bike. You're not becoming a machine. You're becoming independent from emotional sabotage. And once your identity locks in, you'll act from self-concept, not self-doubt. That's freedom. Formula: the 1-minute override. Here's your tool for this phase. It's called the 1-minute override. Use this when you feel resistance but still want to stay on track. Say this line out loud: "I don't need to feel like it. I just need to move." Set a 60-second timer. Begin the smallest related action. Want to write? Open the doc. Type 10 words. Want to work out? Put on your shoes. Do jumping jacks. Want to record? Open the mic, hit record. Say one sentence. That first minute reboots your internal system. You move, despite the friction. And more often than not, something kicks in. Not because you waited for it, but because you earned it. You must out-train the quit pattern. Everyone has a quit pattern. It looks different. Some people ghost their own goals after one hard day. Some silently downgrade their effort until it's meaningless. Some get stuck in tweak mode, constantly editing but never moving. You can't think your way out of it. You have to train beyond it. And that means doing the thing, especially when it feels useless. Because here's the paradox. The very days you want to skip are the ones that change you. That's the truth no one posts about. That's the moment no one records. That's the process no one gets applause for. But it's everything. Write this where you'll see it every morning. From now on, burn this into your morning mirror, your notebook, your lock screen. I do not stop when the spark fades. I start the fire anyway. You don't have to believe it yet. You just have to repeat it until it becomes who you are. Because the 80% will always stop early. But you? You train past that point. You go further than your feelings. You override the wall. You build what no one can take from you. You don't need more motivation. You need to stop seeing yourself as someone who quits. This is the secret no one teaches. Every action you take either strengthens or weakens your identity. Every hesitation, every skipped session, every time you almost do it but don't, it silently reinforces the same message. I'm someone who breaks my own word. You don't say it out loud. You don't admit it. But you feel it. Deep down. That's the real damage of quitting. Not just lost progress. Not just broken streaks. But the identity erosion that makes it harder to believe in yourself the next time. And that is what we're going to rebuild starting now. The lie of "I'll try again tomorrow." You've told yourself this before, haven't you? I'll get back on track. Next week, I'll go all in. Once things settle, I'll commit for real. But you didn't get back. Not because you didn't want to, but because your identity was still wrapped in the past version of you. Here's what most people never realize. You can't perform beyond your self-image. If you see yourself as someone who gives up under pressure, you will. If you see yourself as someone who tries but doesn't finish, you won't. But if you become someone who keeps promises to yourself, even when no one's watching, everything changes. Discipline isn't just a habit. It's an identity anchor. The old identity is the real quitter. You don't need more tools. You don't need a new plan. You don't need another round of figuring things out. What you need is to bury the version of you that keeps crawling back to comfort. That identity, the one who doubts, who hesitates, who waits for the perfect time, must die. That sounds harsh. But it's truth. Because you can't grow into the person who never quits while still protecting the one who always did. And the longer you try to live as both, you'll feel torn. Unstable. Inconsistent. You'll be stuck in a behavioral identity conflict, saying you want to evolve, but acting from the past. That tension is exhausting. So stop. Burn the past blueprint. Rewire your identity in real time. Not with affirmations, but with evidence. Your brain trusts evidence, not hype. If you keep saying "I'm disciplined" but never show it in action, your brain doesn't believe you. But when you act in alignment even once, your brain starts to update its file. You said you'd write, and you wrote. You said no to the distraction, and stayed focused. You finished the hard thing, even without results. That's identity change. Not talk. Not hype. Behavioral proof. And each micro-proof builds momentum. Here's the best part. It doesn't take 30 days. It takes 3 wins in a row to start shifting how you see yourself. That's it. 3 deliberate acts of consistency, on purpose, under pressure. Do it once? A fluke. Twice? A coincidence. 3 times? A new identity begins. How to craft a no-quit identity from scratch. Use this 3-step identity rewire system daily for the next 7 days. Step 1, Identity Declaration. Each morning, write this. I am the kind of person who underscore even when dot. Example. I am the kind of person who moves forward, even when I feel resistance. I am the kind of person who honors my time block, even when I'm tired. I am the kind of person who finishes what I start, even when the result is invisible. This sentence is a contract. Say it. Own it. Act on it. Step 2, 1 proof block. Pick one moment in your day to prove it. Not a whole day. Just one block of proof. 15 minutes of writing. 30 minutes deep work. 10-minute sprint without checking your phone. 5 minutes cold shower. Finishing the task you keep delaying. Make it real. Make it trackable. Step 3, Nighttime Lock-in. At night, ask. Did I behave in alignment with my new identity at least once? If yes, write it down. That's your proof log. 7 days of this? You won't even recognize the person you used to be. Napoleon Hill didn't say fake it till you make it, he said this. Hill said, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." But here's the hidden clause. Belief comes from repetition under tension. You believe it because you've proved it in resistance. That's where belief is forged. Not in vision boards. Not in motivation. But in the quiet moment when no one sees you and you still choose alignment. That's when your mind goes, wait. Maybe we are becoming that kind of person. When you stop needing to convince yourself, you win. At first, you'll have to talk yourself into it. You'll need little rituals, systems, nudges, scripts. But one day, sooner than you think, you'll realize you're not negotiating anymore. You're not wondering if you'll follow through. You just do. No applause. No mood. No audience. Just identity in motion. That's the breakthrough most never reach. That's the version of you you've been chasing. Write this in permanent ink. This is your next identity locking phrase. I don't just want discipline. I am the person who honors my word always. Not sometimes. Not when it's easy. Always. Because if you want to break the 80% quit wall, this is the shift. You stop chasing results. You start protecting your identity. And once that's unshakable, no wall stands a chance. Here's a brutal truth. You can't trust your future self. Not the one who's tired. Not the one who's emotional. Not the one who just got hit with a bad day. That version of you will always look for the exit. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. And if your ability to keep going depends on how you feel in the moment, you'll always be playing roulette with your goals. So what's the solution? You build a system that removes the option to quit. A structure that makes momentum automatic. A setup that doesn't wait on motivation. A rhythm that carries you when your feelings can't. Because once your actions are built into the structure of your life, quitting becomes inconvenient. And that's the breakthrough. You're not undisciplined, you're understructured. Let's get one thing straight. You don't lack discipline. You lack triggers, constraints, and default settings that make discipline easier than avoidance. Think about it. You don't brush your teeth every day because you're highly motivated, you've simply linked the behavior to a trigger and made it automatic. You don't debate whether to wear pants before going outside, it's just baked into the structure of how you move through the world. But when it comes to building a business, creating content, training your body, writing that book, you leave it to willpower. That's the mistake. Greatness isn't powered by will. It's protected by design. What a real anti-quit system looks like. Here's what most people think a system is. A checklist. A habit tracker. A nice-looking Notion template. That's not a system. That's a plan. A real system does three things. Limits your options, you remove the need to choose. You act by default. Triggers automatic motion, your environment pulls you into action before you can think. Increases friction for quitting, you make stopping harder than continuing. Want to break the 80% wall? You don't just make action easier. You make inaction expensive. Design the day so you don't have to decide. Decisions cost energy. And the more decisions you make, the more likely you are to stop. That's why the most consistent people don't wake up and ask, should I work out today? Should I record today? What time should I start? They don't ask. They just do. Because they've pre-decided their identity, their structure, and their priorities. You can do this right now. System template. Wake time, locked. Not negotiable. First action, anchored, movement, writing, meditation, choose one. Work block, pre-scheduled. Specific. Cutoff time, predetermined. Prevents burnout. Non-negotiable habits, 1 to 3 micro actions you complete no matter what. No guessing. No scrolling. No when I feel like it. You engineer your rhythm, then protect it like your life depends on it because your future does. Use environment as a puppet master. Discipline is hard. But environment? That's leverage. Here's what 80% do. They try to force themselves to do hard things in a tempting, unstructured environment. That's like trying to meditate at a rock concert. Flip the script. Environmental leverage checklist. Trigger objects, place items in your workspace that act as visual commands, e.g., a journal on your keyboard equals right before you surf. Friction builders, put distractions out of reach. Turn your phone off. Log out of platforms between sessions. Focus zones, set a physical boundary where only a specific action happens, e.g., this chair equals deep work only. Pre-commitment contracts, make promises in public. Announce deadlines. Invite accountability. You don't win by wrestling your impulses. You win by trapping yourself inside forward motion. Napoleon Hill's invisible structure, the power of definiteness. Hill didn't just talk about goals. He hammered one word, over and over. Definiteness. Definiteness of purpose. Definiteness of plan. Definiteness of action. Why? Because the human brain, when given vagueness, defaults to comfort. But when given structure, it locks in. That's what makes the difference between a wish and a decision. Between I want to and I will. And once you've locked in definiteness, you stop asking, should I? You've already answered it. System lock formula: build it once, keep it forever. Use this 3-part framework to hardwire your anti-quit structure. 1. Define your non-negotiables. Pick 2 to 3 actions so small, you could do them even on your worst day. 10 push-ups. Write 50 words. Review your goals for 3 minutes. Read 1 page. The smaller, the better. These become your daily anchors, they prevent full shutdown. 2. Schedule a sacred block. Choose a time slot every day that is non-tradable. This isn't when I have time. This is if I'm breathing, I show up. Make it known. Protect it. Even 20 to 30 minutes of locked-in action daily separates you from 99% of people who quit when it gets inconvenient. 3. Set an escape tax. If you skip the system, you pay. Not with guilt. With real consequences. Donate money to a cause you dislike. Hand over your favorite item to a friend until you rebuild. Do a challenge you don't want to do, e.g., cold shower. This isn't punishment. It's leverage. You train your brain, quitting has a cost. Completion is freedom. Make your system sacred even when it feels small. You'll be tempted to change it. To scale it too fast. To upgrade before you're ready. Resist. You don't need a bigger system. You need a stickier one. Because once your system is stable, once it's so reliable that your friends could set their clocks by your discipline, then you can expand. Until then, build small. Lock tight. Repeat endlessly. Write this in the first page of every notebook. This is your system builder's creed. My success is not a question of how I feel. It's a result of the system I obey. When feelings lie, your system leads. When motivation fades, your structure stands. When the wall shows up again, you don't even notice. Because the decision was already made. The route already paved. The momentum already moving. And quitting? That's no longer an option built into your day. You lose momentum the moment you open the debate. Should I do it now or later? Do I have enough energy today? Maybe I need to rework the plan first. That voice in your head sounds reasonable. It speaks in calm logic. It offers comfort wrapped in productivity-sounding phrases. But make no mistake. Every time you negotiate with yourself, you give power to the quitter inside you. And if you give it power enough times, it becomes your ruler. So what's the move? You stop negotiating. you start obeying. Not someone else's orders, your own. Not from emotion, but from principle. Not when it feels right, but because it's the law. The 80% let the inner debater win. The reason most people quit isn't because they failed, it's because they kept redeciding every day. They thought, if I feel it, I'll do it. If I'm tired, I'll move it. If things go wrong, I'll shift the plan. And at first, it sounds adaptive, flexible, balanced. But in reality, it's slow death by indecision. Because every time you reopen the choice, you burn energy. You drain discipline. You train your mind that rules are optional. And a system where rules are optional is a system built for collapse. The 20% use command mode, not question mode. Here's what the top 20% do differently. They don't wake up and ask if they'll act. They wake up and execute the command already written. This is what separates masters from dabblers. They don't check in with their mood. They don't pause to evaluate readiness. They don't delay for clarity. They decided once, then made it law. You can do the same. Today. Now. The most dangerous lie, I'll decide later. You've said this before, haven't you? You told yourself, let's see how I feel later. Maybe I'll be in a better headspace tomorrow. Let me wait until this stress passes. But here's what actually happens. You wait. You delay. You forget. You restart next week. You repeat the cycle again and again. Why? Because you gave your mind permission to reopen a closed case. You turned a decision into a discussion. And in doing so, you made action optional. You made discipline negotiable. You made quitting inevitable. Napoleon Hill's unbreakable code, burning the boats. Hill didn't just teach positive thinking. He taught irreversibility. No one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it, and the state of mind must be belief, not mere hope or wish. Open-mindedness is essential for belief. But decision closes the mind against all other possibilities. That's the part no one quotes. Because it's terrifying. To close the door. To say, this is what I do now. Period. To lock in the path and eliminate the back door. But that's what breaks the 80% quit wall. Not desire. Not emotion. Decision backed by identity-level command. Command over mood, the three-pillar framework. If you want to stop negotiating with yourself, build this framework into your day. 1. The written command. Write your core command on paper every morning. Not a to-do. A non-negotiable. Example. At 7 a.m., I write for 30 minutes. No matter what. At 6:30 p.m., I complete the hard task first. No negotiation. At 9 p.m., I review my wins. Always. This is law. Not suggestion. 2. The pre-execution trigger. Every command must have a trigger that leads directly into motion. Examples. When I finish brushing my teeth, I open my dock and write. When I close my laptop for the day, I do 10-minute review. When the clock hits 6 p.m., I start my workout playlist and move. No debate. Just trigger motion. 3. The obedience ritual. Obedience isn't weakness. It's power. Say this phrase before execution. I obey the command. Not my comfort. Say it out loud. It interrupts internal noise. It reminds your nervous system, this is who I am now. The no retalk rule. There's a rule used by Navy SEALs and elite performers. No retalk. It means, once the decision is made, you don't revisit it. You don't reanalyze the plan. Debate if it's worth it. Ask if now is a good time. Adjust based on mood. You move. That's the code. You don't retalk with your excuses. You don't retalk with your tiredness. You don't retalk with your fear. You execute. Write this where it hurts most. Wherever you feel most tempted to delay, write this phrase. This is the moment I used to quit. Now, it's where I execute. Tape it to your fridge, your laptop, your gym bag, your phone case. Remind yourself this used to be your stopping point. Not anymore. Now it's your signal. Your turning point. Your sacred cue to act. From today onward, you obey one law, your own. You're done asking permission. You're done deferring to your mood. You're done letting the weaker version of you steer the day. Now, you make your law. You obey the law. You build the life that comes after the decision. No retreat. No retalk. No reversal. Just forward. The most dangerous moment in your day is the one where you say, I'm not feeling it right now. Because that moment is a test. Not of talent. Not of ability. But of autonomy. Do you move only when your emotions say go? Or do you move because you said so? That's the gap between dabblers and doers. Between potential and progress. Between the 80% who stall and the few who rise. If you want to break the quit wall once and for all, you must train for this. Motion without mood. Movement without spark. Action without feeling. Because if you only move when it feels good, you'll never build anything that lasts. Your feelings are not the problem, your dependence on them is. Let's be clear. You're allowed to feel tired. You're allowed to feel off. You're allowed to feel unmotivated. That's not weakness. That's humanity. But what you do next is what shapes your future. The 80% wait for energy to return. They stall, scroll, snack, delay. And by the time they feel ready again, it's too late. They've lost momentum. They've lost trust. They've lost the day. You've done it too. We all have. But from this point forward, you train for something different. Action as your anchor. Not emotion. Not motivation. Not clarity. Just movement, even if it's small. Especially when it's hard. What the world never taught you about low energy. You've been told to listen to your body. To honor your feelings. To rest when you're low. And sometimes, that's true. But most of the time? Your low energy is not physical. It's psychological. It's a signal from your nervous system saying, this is unfamiliar. Let's go back to comfort. And if you obey that signal too often, your life becomes a loop. Get an idea. Start excited. Feel tired. Pull back. Wait for spark. Quit silently. Repeat. That's not balance. That's bondage. To mood. To emotion. To mental noise. So what do the 20% do instead? They build a default behavior chain that activates before they think. The 20% start before the spark. The elite don't wait for alignment. They start the motion and let the spark catch up. Think about that. They act before they feel ready. They move before clarity arrives. They build systems that trigger motion when most people would sit and spiral. That's the shift. Because action generates energy. Movement creates motivation. Motion clarifies your mind. You've felt this before. You didn't want to start. You pushed yourself anyway. And within minutes, you were flowing. That's not a fluke. That's how the brain works. Napoleon Hill's forgotten instruction, do it now. It's one of the most repeated phrases in Hill's teachings. Do it now. Do it now. Do it now. He wasn't yelling. He was teaching. Because now is the only moment that bypasses hesitation. Not when I'm ready. Not after this call. Not once I'm in the zone. Now. Why? Because hesitation opens a loop in your mind, and loops grow fast. They say, just 5 more minutes. Let me check this first. I'll get started right after. But Hill knew. The longer you wait, the weaker you get. And the antidote isn't thinking faster. It's moving faster. The movement override protocol. Use this simple protocol anytime you feel stuck, tired, unclear, or unmotivated. Step 1. Stand up. Literally. The physical motion breaks the freeze response. You interrupt the mind's loop by changing your body's state. Step 2. Verbal cue out loud. Say, I move even when I don't feel it. Not silently. Say it out loud. You trigger your brain's command center through auditory action. Step 3. Start a 90-second task. Pick any forward action. Set a timer. Examples. Open your laptop and name the project. Record a 90-second voice note. Write 1 sentence. Do 10 push-ups. Organize your desk. Why 90 seconds? Because it bypasses overwhelm. It proves to your brain that momentum is always one motion away. You don't need full power to start, you build power as you go. Here's the trap. You think you need to be at 100% to perform. You think greatness begins after rest, inspiration, clarity. But that's backward. The people who finish books, build businesses, transform their lives, they start at 40%. They begin with friction, not flow. They act while doubting, not after believing. And in doing so, they build belief. Not because they waited to feel ready, but because they earned readiness by moving without it. When you master this, the wall stops winning. This is the day your resistance loses its voice. Because from now on, when you hear, you're too tired, you're not ready, what's the point? You reply, that's exactly why I move. That's the warrior mindset. That's the code Hill embedded in every chapter, hidden between lines, waiting to be claimed. You've just claimed it. Write this into your skin, or at least your notebook. Here's your next identity-locking phrase. I act. No matter what. Especially when it's hard. This is who you are now. You don't wait. You don't debate. You move. And the moment you move, the spark follows. The energy rises. The quit wall crumbles. Discipline isn't something you turn on when you need it. It's who you default to when things go sideways. That's the truth most people miss. They think discipline is a response. Something you do when you feel behind. Something you reach for when things feel urgent. But by then, it's too late. By the time you need discipline, you've already lost the battle. Because real discipline? It's not a reaction. It's a baseline. It's what you fall back to when everything else fails. And until that becomes your default, you'll keep resetting, restarting, and wondering why it doesn't stick. Your current default is killing your progress. Let's take a hard look. What do you default to when? You feel overwhelmed? Your schedule gets hijacked? You didn't sleep well? The results are invisible? Do you default to scrolling? Over-planning? Avoidance disguised as waiting for the right time? Starting over next week? That's the 80% pattern. It looks innocent, but it's lethal. Because when stress spikes, you don't rise to your goals. You sink to your habits. And your habits come from your defaults. The most successful people don't always rise, they rarely fall. High performers aren't operating at 110% every day. They're not superhuman. They've just built a minimum standard so strong that even on their worst days, they don't crash. They might not crush it, but they don't collapse. That's the real win. They show up. They do the work. They maintain motion even when the world is pulling them in every direction. Because discipline has become their resting position, not their emergency button. That's where you're headed. Napoleon Hill's core discipline mechanism, autosuggestion. Hill said, "Any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind through repetition of thought. This is discipline in disguise. It's not hype. It's installation. When you repeat something enough under pressure, in silence, without applause, your brain stops questioning. It accepts. It integrates. It obeys. That's how you shift from delay to discipline. You don't try harder. You repeat smarter until obedience becomes instinct. The dangerous default loop. Most people live in this trap. Wake up late. Scramble. Delay the hard task. Distract themselves with easy wins. Feel behind. Overwhelm spikes. Quit, for today only. Promise to reset tomorrow. Repeat. That loop isn't broken by motivation. It's broken by inserting discipline as the first move of the day. One disciplined act early, automatic, untouchable, kills the loop before it forms. It says, "This is who I am. This is what I do. No matter what." Default to discipline system install in 3 steps. Let's hardwire this into your life. Step 1, set the identity trigger. Choose a daily time where you act no matter how you feel. Examples. Wake up block. Post-lunch reset. 5 p.m. non-negotiable sprint. The action doesn't need to be huge. It needs to be identical every day. Same time. Same action. Same identity. Step 2, attach a ritual phrase. Every time you begin, say, "Discipline is my default. Delay is not my language." Say it while moving. Repetition plus motion equals neural anchoring. Step 3, log the win in a visual tracker. Create a visual wall of proof. No tech required. Use checkboxes, stars, tallies, anything you can see grow. Your brain needs evidence of your new default. This builds emotional loyalty to your new identity. The day discipline becomes easier than excuse. It won't happen on day 1. Maybe not even day 3. But soon your old default will feel off. Delay won't feel safe anymore. Avoidance won't feel comfortable. Inaction will feel like wearing someone else's clothes. That's when you know. You've flipped it. Discipline is now your base layer. And everything good stacks on top. Momentum. Trust. Clarity. Self-respect. The 80% think discipline is a trait, the 20% know it's a training. You weren't born undisciplined. You were just trained to delay. Now, you train in the opposite direction. And it starts with this principle. If I don't feel like it, I still do it. No drama. No debate. No pause. Because that one act, one repeated override rewires every part of your internal system. That's how 20% thinkers move. That's how they act. That's how they win. Write this where it can interrupt the delay loop. Next time you feel yourself drifting into old habits, say, "My default is forward. I never return to stillness." Let it become your interruption. Let it become your law. Let it become your rescue line when emotions try to pull you down. Because you don't have to be perfect. You just have to default to motion. To action. To discipline, especially when the mood says otherwise. You keep saying you don't have time. But that's not why you're stuck. Because the truth is, you've had time. You just didn't have a trigger. You waited for a perfect hour, a clean schedule, a big block of focus. And by the time that moment arrived, if it ever did, you were too mentally fatigued to do anything with it. That's not a time problem. That's a cue problem. Because high performers don't get more hours in the day. They just link their actions to triggers, not time. And once you make that shift, discipline stops being something you try to remember. It becomes something you automatically obey. Time is an excuse disguised as logic. You've said it before. I just need a bigger window. I'll do it once things settle down. Next week will be better. But ask yourself, when was the last time you had the perfect window and actually used it? You didn't. Not because you're lazy, but because you were depending on available time instead of automatic triggers. That's like waiting to feel inspired before going to the gym. You don't need more hours. You need fewer decisions. That's what triggers do. They eliminate the debate. They reduce the delay. They force you into motion before the hesitation can grow. Why the 80% waste the day without realizing it? The average person starts their day with no built-in trigger. They scroll. They drink coffee. They check messages. They react. And just like that, 90 minutes are gone. Gone in thought loops. Gone in passivity. Gone in warming up for a day that never really begins. You've done it too. Not because you didn't want to work, but because nothing in your environment said, begin. That's the difference. Napoleon Hill's unspoken trigger, the law of cosmic habit force. Hill said, habit grows out of environment, out of doing the same thing in the same way repeatedly. Most people quote Hill for big ideas, desire, faith, definiteness of purpose. But they forget this part. He studied how external cues shape internal behavior. He knew that if you always associate a specific action with a specific cue over time, the action happens automatically. That's not magic. That's neural automation. And it's how you break the quit loop permanently. Trigger beats willpower every time. Let's make it simple. You don't go to the gym because you wanted, you go because your shoes are by the door and your playlist starts at 6 o'clock. You don't journal because you're inspired, you journal because there's a notebook on your pillow. You don't stretch because it's fun, you stretch because it's linked to brushing your teeth. That's the formula. Trigger action identity reinforcement. And the more often you repeat that loop, the less discipline you need. Because the decision already happened. Now, you're just obeying the system. The trigger installation blueprint. Let's hardwire this into your life using a 3-part setup. Step 1. Choose the target action. Pick one behavior you want to lock in. Make it specific and short. Examples. Write 50 words. 10-minute sprint. Review 3 goals. 5 push-ups. The key is simplicity. You're not chasing volume. You're chasing consistency. Step 2. Link it to a concrete cue. This is your anchor. Tie the action to something that already exists in your routine. Examples. After coffee. After brushing teeth. When you sit at your desk. When you close your laptop at 6 p.m. Make it external and visual whenever possible. Step 3. Say the lock phrase. Out loud. Every time. When this happens, I do, action. No discussion. You're not waiting for energy. You're not looking at the clock. You're obeying the cue. Repeat that pairing for 7 days straight. You'll feel the shift by day 3. You'll become the shift by day 7. Examples of trigger discipline in the wild. Want to write more? Trigger, sitting in the same chair every morning. Action, type for 5 minutes. Phrase, when I sit here, I create. Want to work out? Trigger, laying out gym clothes the night before. Action, change clothes, press play on music. Phrase, when I lace up, I move. Want to stop nighttime scrolling? Trigger, plugging phone in far from bed. Action, read 1 page. Phrase, when the phone docks, the book opens. This is how you move from I'll try to I always do. Kill the myth of the big block. You keep thinking you need 3 hours to start. But you don't. You need 3 seconds to respond to a cue. That's how the 20% build lives that look superhuman. They're not waiting for blocks. They're running micro-triggers. Dozens of them linked to routines, spaces, objects, and time. Each one reducing the possibility of failure. Each one stacking proof that this is who I am now. Write this near every trigger point. Wherever your habit begins, write this. I don't wait for time. I move at the trigger. Put it on your mirror, your desk, your lock screen. Because when you stop trying to find time and start obeying triggers, everything changes. Your results don't come from how long you work. They come from how often you begin. And now, you begin on cue. Most people fail because they start over too many times. Not because they can't do the work, but because they never build something worth protecting. That's the power of a streak. Not as a gimmick. Not as an app feature. But as a deep identity ritual you anchor your discipline to. Because once you have a streak, and you see it grow, and you feel it in your bones, you stop needing motivation. You start needing to protect the chain. That's when you know. You're no longer trying to stay consistent. You're someone who doesn't break streaks. The 80% start over every Monday. You've done it too. New week. New plan. New tracker. You write your goals. Clean your schedule. Feel the hype. Then Thursday hits. Life happens. You miss a day. And instead of resuming, you restart. Because your brain says, the streak's broken. Let's try again next week. We'll be perfect next time. But here's the truth. The restart cycle is the reason you're stuck. Every time you reset, you signal to your brain. This isn't real yet. I'm still experimenting. That mindset? It never builds permanence. It only builds excuses. You don't need a perfect record, you need an unbreakable standard. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think streaks are about never missing. Wrong. Streaks are about refusing to fall below a certain standard ever. The 20% don't show up perfectly. But they show up predictably. Even on their worst days, they hit their baseline. Even when sick, stressed, or traveling, they move. Because their streak isn't about volume. It's about proof. Proof that they don't go to zero. Ever. That's what you build now. Napoleon Hill's compound discipline principle. Hill never used the word streak. But he embedded the idea everywhere in his work. Persistence is a state of mind, therefore it can be cultivated. He wasn't just talking about stubbornness. He meant deliberate, repetitive proof that builds into momentum you protect. Each day you persist, you multiply your power. Not by 10. But exponentially, because your belief grows faster than your behavior. That's what a streak gives you. Not just discipline, but identity acceleration. What happens after 5 days in a row? By day 5, something shifts. You wake up with expectation. You don't ask, should I? You ask, when? You feel the streak. You see it on paper, on a wall, in your behavior. You become emotionally invested. And this is the key. Once you care about the streak, you'll fight to keep it. That's what the 80% never experience. They never get far enough to care. They quit before the compounding kicks in. But not you. You'll get there. You'll stay there. And it starts now. Streak Builder Protocol, lock it in. Here's how to build a streak that's emotionally sticky and practically unbreakable. Step 1. Pick a daily action you can do on your worst day. Not your best day. Your worst. Ask, if I had no time, no energy, and a terrible mood, what could I still do? Examples. Write one sentence. 10 push-ups. Read 1 page. Review your goals for 60 seconds. This becomes your floor. Never beneath it. Ever. Step 2. Track visually, on paper. Apps are fine, but your brain responds to physical evidence. Use a calendar you mark daily. A wall with sticky notes. A notebook with check marks. Let your progress stare back at you. Step 3. Name the identity. You're not doing a challenge. You're becoming someone new. Say, I'm the kind of person who doesn't break the chain. Say it. Every day. You're not tracking behavior. You're locking identity. What if you miss a day? You don't. Read that again. You don't miss. Even if your day falls apart, you still hit the floor habit. Because that's the point of the streak, not perfection, but permanence. And if you do miss, you don't miss too. That's the rule. 1 miss is a slip. 2 is a slide. 3 is a collapse. Train your brain, we fall. But we rise fast. This is how streaks build self-trust. Here's the best part. Every day you complete your streak, especially when it's hard, you reclaim personal power. You say, I follow through. I do what I said I would do. I'm real. That kind of proof? It compounds. It expands. It bleeds into everything else. You walk taller. You decide faster. You lead better. Because you're not guessing who you are anymore. You're proving it daily. Write this where you track your streak. Right above your tracker, write this. This chain is my power. I never break it. Let it become sacred. Let it become identity. Let it become the evidence that this time is different. Because this time, you're not just trying harder. You're building smarter. This time, you don't quit. You protect the streak. You protect the identity. You protect the proof. And you never fall below the line again. Here's the hard truth most people never face. You don't lose because you slip. You lose because you spiral after the slip. The missed workout isn't the problem. The skipped routine isn't the problem. The one lazy decision isn't the problem. It's what happens after. That voice inside says, you've ruined the streak. Might as well start over Monday. Let's wait until the timing's better. That's how the spiral begins. And before you know it, one skipped task becomes 5. One excuse becomes a habit. One bad day becomes a lost week. That's not random. That's a pattern of collapse, and it's time to break it. The 80% fall into the guilt loop. The cycle is predictable. Miss a habit. Feel guilty. Lose momentum. Try to restart with perfection. Quit again when perfection breaks. They call it a rough patch. But it's not. It's a spiral of identity erosion. And the deeper you go, the harder it feels to climb back. Not because it's harder, but because you're carrying the weight of shame instead of discipline. Here's the shift. You don't need to restart. You need to recover faster. The 20% bounce, they don't break. Top performers mess up too. They miss days. They lose focus. They drop the ball. But they don't spiral. Why? Because they're not trying to be flawless. They're trying to be resilient. They see failure as a signal to return, not a reason to retreat. That's what separates them. They don't say, I failed. They say, I slipped. Let's tighten the loop. That's your new mindset. Napoleon Hill on failure as redirection. Hill didn't treat failure as the end. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. The seed isn't in the fall. It's in the response. The slip is the test. The comeback is the proof. From now on, you don't fear slippage. You train for recovery. The spiral stops with a system, not shame. Shame makes you hide. Systems pull you back. If you rely on emotions to re-engage, you'll wait too long. If you rely on structure, you cut the spiral short. You need a default comeback protocol. A routine that says, okay, we missed. Now we move. Here's the system. The comeback protocol: kill the spiral in 3 steps. Step 1, state the slip without drama. Say it out loud. I missed yesterday. That's all. No story. No guilt. No justification. You are identifying reality, not internalizing failure. Step 2, touch the habit immediately. Even if it's tiny. Even if it's ugly. Write 1 word. Do 1 push-up. Read 1 sentence. Say your identity phrase. The point isn't performance. The point is breaking the freeze. Step 3, log the recovery. Write this. I bounced back. I don't restart. I continue. The streak isn't broken. It was interrupted and reinforced. The illusion of starting fresh is a trap. You've told yourself, I'll restart Monday. I'll begin again next month. Let me reset everything. But here's the danger. Every time you restart, you reinforce the identity of a quitter who needs a clean slate. You don't need clean slates. You need unfinished commitment. Because the people who win, they don't start over. They continue through the mess. They understand. Perfection is not the goal. Continuity is. Make slips visible, not shameful. Here's a powerful trick. On your habit tracker, when you miss a day, don't erase it. Mark it with a different color. This shows you. I'm honest. I face my patterns. I'm still moving. Your brain learns. A slip isn't the end. It's a checkpoint. And over time, you build trust. Because now, even your mess-ups have structure. Identity recovery phrase. Every time you miss, say, I don't need perfect days. I need consistent returns. Say it. Live it. Write it. Let that phrase interrupt the shame loop. Because your power is not in how often you miss. It's in how fast you return. The faster you recover, the smaller the spiral. The smaller the spiral, the stronger the habit. The stronger the habit, the unbreakable your momentum becomes. Write this next to your habit tracker. Missing once is normal. Missing twice is a decision I never make. You don't need to be flawless. You just need to be someone who never disappears. You touch the system. You reconnect to the motion. You come back stronger every time. Because you've broken the real wall. The spiral of self-punishment. Now, you just rise. Again. And again. And again. You think too much. That's not an insult. It's an observation. One that's killing your momentum. Because the longer you think before moving, the more likely you are to hesitate. And hesitation is the first brick in the wall you're trying to break. You've built a habit of analyzing before acting. Planning before engaging. Waiting for clarity before momentum. But here's the truth. The people who win don't move because they're sure. They move because they've trained motion to be first. Action before thought. That's the new code. The 80% let thought delay execution. Every time you pause to figure it out, you reintroduce doubt. You reopen the door to fear. You increase the chance of doing nothing at all. It sounds like, is this really the best use of my time? Maybe I should plan more first. What if I mess this up? And suddenly, 10 minutes pass. then 30. Then the whole day is gone, burned in loops. Not because you didn't care, but because you gave thought too much power. The 20% trust action to clarify the path. Here's what top performers know. Motion creates feedback. Feedback creates clarity. Clarity creates momentum. But only if you start. They don't overthink the angle. They move the first piece and let the next piece reveal itself. That's the power of kinetic intelligence, knowing that thought works better after you act. You've done it before. You resisted writing, then wrote the first sentence, and suddenly the page filled. You didn't want to work out, then did the first rep and energy surged. You didn't feel ready to pitch, then made the call and confidence rose mid-sentence. That wasn't inspiration. That was action pulling cognition forward. Napoleon Hill's mental reversal. Hill said, "Do not wait. The time will never be just right. Start where you stand." This is more than a motivational line. It's neuroscience before we had the word for it. Hill understood. Waiting for readiness is a trap. Starting generates alignment. Movement precedes belief. You don't need to feel like doing it. You need to do it until you feel like it. Why you overthink and how to override it. Overthinking is a protective mechanism. It tells your brain, if we delay, we avoid danger. If we plan, we control the outcome. But that instinct is outdated. You're not in danger. You're in creative friction. And the only way through it is to move before you think. That's not recklessness. That's trained priority. The move first protocol. Let's make it mechanical. Use this when you feel stuck, looping, or not ready. Step 1, say the trigger phrase out loud. Think later. Move now. This flips the brain from planning mode into execution mode. Step 2, touch the task in 10 seconds. Don't think. Don't plan. Just touch the first object in the chain. Writing? Open the doc. Type anything. Workout? Start warm up. 1 rap. Email? Write the subject line. Don't edit. You've got 10 seconds. That's it. This builds reactive initiation. Step 3, set a 3-minute timer. No commitment beyond that. You're not doing the full task. You're simply letting motion take over. Once in motion, most of the time, you'll continue. And if not, that's still a win. You broke the freeze. What you lose by waiting for clarity. You think waiting protects your time. But it costs more than it saves. Here's what delay steals from you. Energy you could have gained from progress. Trust in your ability to start under pressure. Proof that motion is always available. Every delay sends a signal, I don't trust myself yet. Every micromove sends a signal, I'm someone who initiates, no matter what. Over time, those signals become identity. Fast action builds the self you keep dreaming about. That version of you who gets things done? They're not smarter. They're not more organized. They're just trained to move before they think. They understand. Thought supports action. But it should never block it. Or lead it. Action leads. Every time. Write this at the top of every daily plan. No thoughts before motion. I begin before I evaluate. This is your override. You don't need another productivity system. You need the habit of doing before deciding. That's the wall you break today. No more waiting for certainty. No more sitting in loops. From now on, move. Then adjust. Then accelerate. You've trained the moves. You've broken the patterns. You've crossed the invisible wall 80% never even see. Now it's time to lock it in. Because real transformation doesn't happen when you feel powerful. It happens when your identity makes quitting irrelevant. Not because you force yourself. Not because you hype yourself. But because you've become someone who simply doesn't stop. That's the final shift. That's the code Napoleon Hill embedded beneath every principle he ever taught. The man who wins is the man who thinks he can. But more than that, the man who acts like he can, even when it's hard, becomes unstoppable. That man is you. You're not building habits anymore, you're forging an identity. All this time, you thought you were building discipline. But that was just the surface. Underneath the reps. Beneath the systems. Behind every micro-action. You were writing something deeper. Your permanent self-concept. Now, when life gets hard, you don't fold. You default to motion. You default to proof. You default to who you are. And that changes everything. The 80% rely on conditions, the 20% rely on identity. Most people still say, I'll act when I feel it. I need the right setup. I'll be consistent once things settle. But the 20%? They act because it's who they are. They protect the system, not the mood. They chase congruence, not comfort. That's the version of you that's now online. The one who doesn't flinch. The one who doesn't need hype. Because you no longer chase discipline. You embody it. Your new identity is built on evidence, not ego. You don't fake it anymore. You've built the receipts. The streak you kept when you didn't feel like it. The action you took when doubt screamed. The protocol you followed after you slipped. The motion you chose before thinking. All of it proof. And now that proof feeds belief. And that belief fuels action. And that action confirms identity. This is the upward spiral the 80% never access. But you've earned it. Not by being perfect. But by persisting when most would pause. The 4 pillars of the identity that never quits. Let's name what you've built. 1. Default to discipline. You don't wait for mood. You act from principle. You built motion into your structure. It moves when you do, every time. 2. Obey the system, not the emotion. You trust the plan, not the feeling. You follow the ritual, even when it's inconvenient. You do the work, especially when the voice in your head says wait. 3. Protect the streak at all costs. You don't skip 2. You don't ghost your goals. You move the smallest piece, even when the full effort is out of reach. That's integrity. That's protection. That's identity. 4. Reclaim fast after every slip. You don't restart. You recover. You don't spiral. You stabilize. You miss, and then you move. Because your momentum is more sacred than your mistakes. You're not who you were when this began. Think back to the beginning. That version of you waited for motivation, believed in fresh starts, negotiated with discomfort, quit silently when the path got foggy. That version was trying, wishing, hoping. But you decided. You proved. You moved. Even when it didn't feel like progress. Even when no one saw. Even when it felt too slow to matter. You stacked the invisible wins. And now, you're unrecognizable. You're no longer chasing momentum. You are momentum. Napoleon Hill's final secret: become the cause. You've read the words before. Success comes to those who become success conscious. But what does that mean? It means you stop reacting to the world and start creating from identity. It means your internal system leads the external result. It means you don't do discipline to get results. You do discipline because it's who you are. You don't execute to win approval. You execute to protect your character. You don't persist to prove something. You persist because it's truthfully aligned with your self-image. You've stopped being reactive. You've become causal. You've stopped quitting. Because quitting no longer makes sense for who you've become. Final lock phrase: write it, say it, own it. Here's what goes on your mirror, your notebook, your wall. This is who I am now. I don't stop. I don't stall. I continue always. You've trained it. You've earned it. Now you protect it. Because this identity? It doesn't need permission. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't crumble. It moves. Every time. Even now.